You know, I had a completely different intro planned out for this review. I was planning to be coy, tongue-in-cheek, and a bit subversive about how The Incredibles was the true superhero family movie that Fantastic Four First Steps is trying to be. And while that's still the case, Fantastic Four was surprisingly decent. Though it only happened a few times, I actually had a visceral and verbal reaction to some of the events and characters in the film. It was refreshing to have a fairly good time with a superhero movie. I didn't like Captain America 4, Thunderbolts, and was quite disappointed with Superman. Even Invincible Season 3 had me more frustrated with it than delighted. And despite the many problems in this Fantastic Four movie, I left the theater with an overall positive experience and impression of the film.
I like the way that sounds. What you got in mind?
The movie is self-contained, so you don't need to have watched any other Marvel content as a prerequisite for this film. The cast was good, for the most part. Despite my initial reservations with the casting for the main team, I like the dynamic between all the members of the Fantastic Four. There isn't much depth to the relationships between every member of the group, but there were a handful of moments that did showcase their camaraderie. Say what you want about zesty Pedro, I know I'm certainly annoyed with how he's seemingly everywhere nowadays. But the man can act, and he did a solid job as the kind of tortured, super genius savant of Reed Richards. Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm was my favorite part of the movie though. I'll speak more on the other characters in the spoiler section. The pacing of the movie starts off well, but it does slow down in the second act. The movie doesn't really have many action sequences, maybe 2.5 or 3, and the pseudoscience isn't entirely engaging. The plot does feel like it's been thinned out, and our characters don't really get much development. The story also slowly builds up to the final battle in the third act. There are quite a bit of attempts to go for jokes in the film, but thankfully the few moments they go for something serious are allowed to sit and breathe just for a bit.
Okay.
As mentioned, the movie is self-contained, so it's not really consequential to the rest of the MCU. It's set in an entirely different universe, and doesn't provide any real clarity on how it'll tie into the main MCU universe and the characters that fans know. Nor does it really set up the upcoming events in Avengers Doomsday. The film is moderately entertaining, has a handful of compelling moments and characters, and even though the content and structure of the story don't hold up beyond a cursory level of scrutiny, there's enough to have me somewhat interested in seeing what will happen with this group next. It by no means is a great movie, but it's probably the best comic book superhero movie we've had as of late.
What time is it, Ben? No.
What time is it, Ben?
No, Johnny.
Say it!
I don't wanna.
Say it!
Alright, now it's spoiler time. Fantastic Four First Steps is not an origin story. It starts off by quickly catching the audience up to the 4 years that have passed since this super team first showed up. We are introduced to an alternate Earth, where the Fantastic Four have created a retro, futuristic 60s utopia. This world seemingly adores them, and they are the only superheroes around. The introductory sequence of the film is really solid. You see the flashbacks of heroism, and get enough backstory on the team members if you weren't already familiar with their origins from other mediums. There's a part of me that wishes we got to see a movie about how the team defeated the Mole Man and the other villains in their rogues gallery. Something on the smaller scale that can deliver on the action and character development rather than the world-ending threat of Galactus would have been better in hindsight. After our introductory sequence, we meet the Silver Surfer, the herald of Galactus. The CGI was hit or miss with this film, and it shows with the Silver Surfer. I wasn't ecstatic with the casting, nor enthused with the decision to go with the obscure female version, Shalla-Bal, rather than the classic Norin Radd Silver Surfer. The movie tries to go for a romantic angle with her and Johnny Storm, but it isn't explored or developed in a meaningful or significant way. and then also tries for a sympathetic angle with her questionable change of heart to ultimately help save the day and defeat Galactus at the end of the film. Probably the biggest problem with Fantastic Four is that it's a mile wide and an inch deep. They introduce quite a few concepts and ideas that aren't developed to a substantive degree. The movie isn't really consistent with itself either. Shalla-Bal is responsible for the deaths of trillions of lives. This isn't the first time she's prepared a world for Galactus. She actually chooses the worlds for Galactus to consume, and the movie proves to us that she meets the beings of the planets that she's condemned to death. So her turn against Galactus, because all of a sudden she feels guilty about what she's done, was not earned. We don't get any real reason for why this would be the time for her to rebel. The movie could have had her interact with the humans for more time to reinstill some level of compassion in her, but it doesn't. The movie could have dialed up the romance between her and Johnny Storm, and through their love, she turns against Galactus, but it doesn't do that. The movie also could have set up that this was the first time she condemned a planet with sentient life, all because Galactus was adamant about wanting baby Franklin, and therefore she plots against him. But it doesn't do that either. Shalla-Bal wasn't menacing. The CGI was off-putting. She can also move as fast as the speed of light, but when the movie needs her to be slower, she conveniently is.
Damn it all!
I really didn't like the implementation and execution of her character.
Hold your loved ones close. And speak the words you've been afraid to speak.
Johnny Storm was surprisingly impressive in this movie. He isn't limited to being a dunce playboy, but instead is a scientist himself. I love that this movie gave his character another dimension. Now, First Steps does ask the audience to make plenty of logical leaps, and really does require a high level of suspension of disbelief. And Johnny's deciphering and learning of an alien language through one sentence is no exception. I like that he was willing to sacrifice himself multiple times in the movie. It got me to root for the guy. He confronts the Silver Surfer and offers himself to become a herald of Galactus to spare Earth, like she did for her planet. Or even offers to take baby Franklin's place to save Earth. And then at the end of the movie, he decides to give the final blow, sacrificing himself to send Galactus through the teleporter. But what could have been a meaningful and gutsy sacrifice is undercut because the Silver Surfer shoves him out of the way to do it herself.
Girls get it done.
I mean, you could see it coming that once Shalla-Bal left the planet, she was going to come back right at the end to save the day. Same thing with Sue Storm. She gave up her life to help defeat Galactus, but you knew, in that sequence that lasted way too long, that baby Franklin was going to bring her back to life. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to the plot. After the initial confrontation with Galactus, the Fantastic Four conveniently make it back to Earth in a month's time. There's that pseudoscience checking in. And then, for some reason, Reed lets the whole world know they couldn't defeat or bargain with Galactus, because he wants his newborn son. Understandably, the world that was once a utopia is now thrown into chaos. The stakes of the film are communicated and understood, but not really felt. Coming into the movie, there was a level of uncertainty I had with the fates of our characters. And if there was going to be a film where the heroes lose, it was this one. The post-credit scene in Thunderbolts shows the Fantastic Four Excelsior ship arriving to the main universe. Plenty of speculation surrounded this. Who's on that ship? Did the Fantastic Four lose to Galactus and escaped their dimension to arrive to the main one? Did the Fantastic Four actually beat Galactus, but at the cost of leaving their own universe? Or is Doctor Doom on the ship, arriving to cause problems for the main universe? But no, there isn't anything to tie in the events of First Steps to the main universe of the MCU. The heroes win because of serious plot convenience. Galactus, The force of nature, a being whose responsibility is to cull the universe out of necessity, really just wants to retire because baby Franklin will end his perpetual hunger.
Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
His motivations are shallow and too emotional for the kind of being he's positioned to be and should be. The portrayal, line delivery, and design were very good. But he's significantly depowered and shouldn't have been beaten by the Fantastic Four. But I digress. As the movie meanders along through the second act, Reed's genius plan is to teleport the Earth to an entirely different place. There's that pseudoscience checking in. The teleportation device was not consistent and didn't make sense. Reed's experiment shows that you need an input portal device for the original destination and an output portal device for where you want your object to go. There is no way they should be able to teleport the Earth to an entirely different part of the universe without an output portal device. They only had input portal devices around the Earth. They also built them at lightning speed, but chalked that up to convenience too. If the movie wanted to make this work, the demonstration should have shown Reed teleporting the egg to different locations that didn't require an output portal device, rather than being limited to teleporting the object to where the output portal device is. It also required way too much power to teleport the egg, so to scale the experiment to teleporting the entire planet did not make sense. It doesn't matter if everybody turned off their power. The grids on the entire Earth could not support the power required to do this. If only there was someone who had enough power to be a conduit to execute this kind of an idea. Somebody with the power cosmic?
Coincidence? I think not!
The lapses of time also don't add up in the film. Somehow, the team's trip to Galactus and back to Earth only takes a month. They're able to get to Galactus with a faster-than-light spaceship adapter pod. But then their adapter pod gets destroyed in their escape. Even with whipping around the black hole neutron star, it didn't make sense that they made it back to Earth in just a few weeks. Especially when they were low on fuel. How many pseudoscience points are we at now? And then the film also says that normal weapons wouldn't work on Galactus or his ship. But it shows us that his ship was damaged by Excelsior's cannons, and that Galactus is vulnerable to damage from the Human Torch and Reed with a stick.
Damn it!
Oh, right, he's vulnerable when the plot needs him to be, and powerful when the plot needs him to be. And you know that tractor beam that can locate and obtain a single individual on a planet? He doesn't need to use it to get baby Franklin. Galactus read the script and will conveniently adhere to the needs of the Fantastic Four's plan to lure him to the teleporter. He won't make any effort to destroy the contraption, even after he's recognized what's going on. And of course he's susceptible to Sue's force fields. He won't use his telekinetic powers on her or anyone else. That would just ruin the movie. The girl's gotta save the day.
Fuck.
I like this movie, don't I? Obviously, the more I've thought about First Steps, the more my opinion on it has decreased. There are so many problems and inconsistencies. But what did work for me was the retro, futuristic 60s world. The style and feel was so unique, so the novelty of it was pleasing. And I liked the dynamic between our Fantastic Four team. Everybody but Ben Grimm got their moment and a time to shine. The Thing was sadly underdeveloped and underutilized. And the scenes the movie tries to give him for something of development were actually wasteful and unnecessary. Outside of that, he did get a nice scene with Reed to establish and reinforce their friendship. A hint of depth and something interesting, but once again, not explored in a truly meaningful way. As mentioned earlier, I did like Pedro's depiction of Reed Richards. His interactions with Sue and Franklin were interesting and fairly endearing. He was pretty good as the leader of the team. and I found the curse of competence and constant catastrophizing quite compelling. But a couple of those arguments with Sue were oddly cut short. There definitely was more discourse needed in those interactions. Speaking of, the movie doesn't really do anything thought-provoking with the moral conundrum posed of sacrificing a loved one to save the world. There's hardly any resistance to the Fantastic Four's seemingly selfish decision. Even the mention of chaos and riots going on all around the world don't carry much weight. There's a modicum of desperation in our heroes to find a solution, but again, the movie isn't really effective with the little time it gives them to navigate through the problem. Sue Storm's speech fell really flat, especially with her circular logic of, we won't sacrifice our son to save the world, but we won't sacrifice our world to save our son. That's saying something without actually saying anything. Her speech wasn't actionable, and it's odd that there wasn't any pushback from the normal people all around her. They just accept it because family. And rounding out our Fantastic Four team, again, Johnny was the standout character of the movie for me. A true hero and a much welcome surprise. There was a level of dynamism with his character that was moving. It was nice to root for the good guys again. Johnny Storm was the most redeeming aspect about the film, and the primary reason why I have an overall good impression of First Steps. And that's the gist to some of my spoiler-free and spoiler-filled thoughts on Fantastic Four: First Steps. This movie was surprisingly refreshing. It had a decent balance of levity and some seriousness in the plot. Despite the many problems I had with it, I still have a relative fondness with the film. Funny how movies can do that, huh? What did you think of Fantastic Four? After seeing this film, what do you think will happen in Avengers Doomsday? Hit me up, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll catch you next time on The Gist.